What's going on there, guys? Good morning, good afternoon out there to everyone. It is the Earthmaster here on this Monday, start of the work week, January 10th, 2022, about 11:08 a.m. California time. Latest quake on the Earthquake 3D globe here. It's a 2.7 into the Northern California area, right off the coast of Northern California. Once again, into the southern end of the Cascadia. Quite a bit of earthquake activity ramping up overnight. Specifically in our watch zone that we were watching yesterday, following a swarm of earthquake activity along the Kermadec Trench. This area has seen a 6.2 earthquake overnight. Prior to that, we definitely had a bunch of 4s and 5s kicking up in this region of the trench here. Let's go ahead and go back the last 7 days, 4.5 and above. You can see some movement kicking up here prior to the 6.2 within the New Zealand area, just north of New Zealand along the Kermadec Trench. We did see a bunch of deep earthquake activity up here prior to all this movement down south within the Fiji Islands area. Looks like some of those deeper earthquakes there. A couple 4s kicking off there, almost 600 kilometers below the surface. Even prior to these, we've seen a little bit of deeper movement. A lot of deeper earthquake activity along the Fiji area here tends to increase the likelihood of earthquakes along this region here, and also to the areas of the northwest here. We have not seen any further activity within these 2 points here of the deep movement up here and the area to the Papua New Guinea and the Solomon Islands area. So I expect this to fill in pretty quickly as we're seeing a little bit of movement even down south here along the Kermadec Trench. This swarm right here is exactly what it is. It's a swarm. Need to tack on some of the earthquake activity from yesterday here, and you got a pretty good sizable swarm of decent earthquakes kicking off along this region. Most of it pretty shallow, so I wouldn't doubt if we start to see a little bit of adjustment here into the trench region, down dip into the subduction zone, the deeper earthquakes there. And they get some big ones here within this region, so we got to be on guard here, New Zealand area. In the day today, especially, I think we're going to see some adjustment there, and also within this region of the areas of the quiet zone here, this region, and around the Fiji Islands area. A little path to cover there, but I think we're going to fill that in pretty nicely. The Mariana Trench northward, Philippine Plate looks pretty quiet for the most part. Here's that little swarm of activity that we were seeing kick up yesterday. I was bouncing back and forth between some adjustments here south of the Philippines and the New Zealand area was popping off roughly about the same time. As soon as the earthquake would kick off down here, we'd see adjustment within a couple minutes up here, and it did that numerous times with all these earthquakes that were taking place. So quite a bit of proof in some adjustment along the plates there in a short amount of time. Just south of the Tokyo area, seen a 4.1. This one pretty deep, though, into the Philippine Plate, 341.4 kilometers for that earthquake. And the rest of the area to the north, Japan Trench and the Kuro-Kamchatka Trench, still absolutely quiet. Man, it's coming up there. Aleutian Trench, very quiet as well. Looking at a little microquake activity throughout the region here of Alaska up into the Fairbanks area as well. Nothing spectacular, just a little bit of microquakes around the land, and the recent quake here within the last hour in the Alaska region along this area where we've seen a little bit of movement here over the last 7 days or so. Of course, we had that 5 point, USGS has this as a 5.2 occurring a couple days ago. The Canadian website shows it as a 5.5. So take your pick. Either way, there was definitely a 5-pointer up there in the Canada region. That one was about 28.4 kilometers below the surface. So still seeing some aftershock sequences following that earthquake up there. Into the west, we have seen things kind of pick up a little bit here, including the Northern California area. Seen a pretty deep movement, deep subduction zone earthquake here, 2.9. This, of course, over here is the Cascadia megathrust zone. And the locked area kind of sits in between this region, right? Well, can't really draw it here on the map, but it begins roughly about right here where the line is, to inland or at least down dip here within this area. If you were to draw a line, I'm still trying to figure out my my whiteboard issue. Not for sure what's going on with it, but not top of the priority list right now. But either way, definitely a subduction zone quake with that depth there at 26.7 kilometers for that earthquake. Since then, we have seen some renewed earthquake activity down here around the Mendocino Triple Point area. It's a region where the Pacific Plate, the North American Plate, and the Gorda Plate all meet here, kind of within this area, Triple Point Junction. They had a right smack dab 2.7 at 18.5 kilometers, and a little bit further downstream here along it's a Whale Gulch Bear Harbor fault zone. A bunch of different fault zones that run through the Cascadia area. This one here, a 1.7 at 11.2 kilometers. Up north, a little bit of movement around the Washington area, and also this little earthquake way out here, kind of towards the Lexington, Oregon area, 1.5. Don't see a whole lot of movement out here, but a little bit of activity over the last 24 hours in that region, and also some activity in a triangle fashion outside of Seattle. A couple deeper earthquakes as well within that region, 1.9 at 23 kilometers here, just south of the Strait of Juan de Fuca. Areas to the Intermountain West region and southward really ramping up as well overnight. Seen some sawtooth fault system or sawtooth fault action out here with a couple of microquakes, including a 2.6 near Stanley, Idaho, and some activity pretty much stretching all the way down from Yellowstone into the Nevada area. Seen some renewed movement and earthquake activity at the areas that had seen larger earthquakes in the past, including up here around the Wells, Nevada area, 3.7, and some movement around the Tonopah area once again, really ramping up with a bunch of threes and whatnot here in this region. Down along the eastern crest of the Sierra Nevadas, a little bit of activity, including a 1.6 in the Walker area, 3.3 kilometers. Yellowstone kind of Long Valley kind of tapering off a little bit here, although just outside the caldera, still seeing a little bit of movement. Specifically, just to the south of the Long Valley supervolcano, a bunch of microquakes kicking off here in this region. Pretty shallow earthquake activity, but kind of dying off compared to days in the past. Ridgecrest is ramping up in earthquake activity. If you look at these little spots here, Ridgecrest, areas that have been hit with larger quakes, such as the Tonopah area and up around the Wells, Nevada area, and the 6-pointer that hit in the Idaho area back in 2020. It all makes sense that adjustment is taking place here along the western part of the North American Plate in the terms of increased seismic activity. Okay, now if it was just one little area showing heightened activity, we'd be like, okay, it's built up a lot of energy and it's just releasing some after all the stress. But it's numerous areas showing seismically increase in pressure, leading me to believe regionally as a whole, we're talking about the western part of North American Plate and the Pacific Plate in general here, the interaction between the two is increasing in pressure. Therefore, we've seen the obvious areas that have been hit before in the past, right, with larger earthquakes showing seismic increase in pressure, including the northwest part of California. So that's a fact right there. A little bit of activity along the coastline here, the Macama fault system, showing a little microquake on it, 1.7 near the Willits area, 4.5 kilometers, and of course movement around the hydrothermal operations here and the geyser activity kicking up today as well. Inland, outside the Bay Area, this region pretty quiet around San Francisco for now. Just south of the Livermore area, seen a 1.3 within the last hour. That's just off of the Greenville fault zone, Marsh Creek Greenville section. Little small fault east of these major fault systems here that run through concrete jungles, such as LA and Oakland and all areas within this region. Also a little bit of movement around the Hayward fault zone. That's kind of a major player in producing some sizable earthquakes, and that will be coming in the future, no doubt. A little bit of activity stretching down towards the San Andreas fault system, which is this darker plate boundary indicated there on the map. Also some activity off of that to the west on the Pacific side of the plate boundary. Some microquakes popping up here in these little orange circles. There's the increase in activity along the Ridgecrest region. Of course, that area, July 4th, July 5th in 2019, seen a couple large earthquakes there. That's kind of filling in pretty nicely as well with the increase in movement and pressure along the west coast. San Jacinto Fault area, excuse me, still not 100% healed. But man, do I feel a lot better, folks. I think all your thoughts and whatnot, your positive vibes have helped me out quite a bit, and I appreciate it. It was pretty killer for a little while. Had a fever of about 102.3, not last night, but the night before. And it was horrible. Pains like you would not believe. So yeah, kind of dying down a little bit within this area of California. But then again, that kind of verifies what I've said here in the past. Whenever we see activity northward here north of the Garlock Fault Zone pick up, we always see a little bit of quietness here in the southern part of the state, or at least southern part of the California, south of the Garlock Fault area, basically covering this entire area. It tends to quiet down. As you see on the map, most of the movement in the last hour, all these red dots here up above that line, a lot of times we see movement here in the red circles down south, but that is not the case when we're getting the activity really ramping up here to the north. I have a drink of my coffee, guys. It's kind of helps out a little bit. Of course, caffeine on a Monday, we definitely need that, right? It's going to be a beautiful day out here in California. It's supposed to be around 62 degrees, so ready for some sunshine. Going to take the kids out and play, and just enjoy life, enjoy the greenery we have out here from all the rain this winter so far. Texas area, a little bit of movement inland. Of course, this area also does pick up, but I expect this to pick up after the movement here in the west coast. It always tends to kick up here along the west and intermountain west regions, and then begin to show signs of increase in pressure here along the the weaker spots out here in the land from all the massive amounts of going on out here. The not necessarily fracking, but it could be a little bit of that. It could be the oil pumping operations and the injection of the all that wastewater and whatnot. Of course, if you zoom into Texas area, you can see quite a bit of not beautiful farmhouses out there. Those are not beautiful cities with massive lots of land for the houses. Those are all pumping operations back to back, literally within feet of each other, scattered about the land, where there's probably millions of them throughout Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas. Millions might be an understatement. I don't know. We'll see. I don't think it's an overstatement by long shot there. But anyway, we do see movement kick up here inland in these weak areas following activity here in the west. And that's kind of what we're seeing. Seeing a little telltale sign of some movement here in the Texas area, Oklahoma, and Kansas. New Madrid zone looks pretty quiet. The eastern part of the country pretty quiet as well. Did see a little bit of activity in the Puerto Rico area overnight as well, including the Puerto Rico Trench up here to the north, where we've seen a couple deeper earthquakes here. Looks like a 3.5 at 32 kilometers. Deeper movement here into the Trench region, just outside the Puerto Rico on the southwest side here. A little bit of twos kicking off here. Pretty shallow earthquake activity down there. And movement throughout the rest of the Caribbeans look pretty quiet. South America did kick up a little bit. Excuse me. Still got, still got a little bit in me, but I tell you what, I feel way better, and it's getting there. 5.5 kicked off in the Argentina area last night. 10 kilometers, pretty shallow, but prior to that, we've seen some deeper movement. These three earthquakes here into the Peru-Chile Trench, 4.1, 146 kilometers, and these other quakes relatively deep as well, creating a little surface adjustment up here with that 5.5. Of course, this area was hit with that larger earthquake up here north last month, I believe, or towards the end of November. Can't remember exactly when, but definitely seen some activity work its way down south over the last few weeks. Middle East over here, or the Greece area, I should say. Middle East looks pretty quiet. Look at that. Not a whole lot of movement. Over here in the Greece area, they did see a 5.5 earthquake and a couple aftershocks as well. This one about 10 kilometers below surface. Looks like it was felt over a little bit of area around the Albania area and the Greece region, all showing a little bit of some strong shaking out there in the pager section there, showing all yellow and orange on the map, with some moderate shaking being reported from folks out there. Africa, South Africa looks pretty quiet. The Southwest Indian Ridge and the Atlantic all look very quiet as well. Did skip this one way up here. Did not see this one up in the Canada area. 3.2 earthquake striking out there in the St. Lawrence Seaway. Let's go ahead and check out the Earthquakes Canada map real quick and see what these folks are reporting within the last day. 3.7. Notice the magnitude difference there. 3.2 from the USGS, 3.7 from the Earthquakes Canada map. 18.8 kilometers below surface. Also some activity within the last hour, or at least the latest earthquake over here. A little bit of movement around the area just north of the, let me bring this up, north of the Cascadia subduction zone, off the Prince Rupert area. Looks like some activity kicking up here as well. That's an obvious sign of, as I said, regionally, the North American plate showing a lot of activity and pressure with the Pacific plate. So that's just even further proof there of a lot of activity kicking up and increasing there along the plate boundary. Getting back over here to the USGS map. Let's go ahead and bring the all magnitudes in here real quick again. Off to Hawaii we go. One of these days, right? For me, hopefully. I don't know. It'd be nice to visit there. Missy Mimi's has been out there once. Still kind of on my list, but eventually we'll get out there. Southeast region still showing some movement. Also Mauna Loa up here, a little earthquake activity. Pretty shallow, 1.8. Right around the northeastern part of the Big Island at 1.7. This one pretty deep, 34.9 kilometers below the surface for that earthquake. So once again, folks, still watching this region pretty closely. Although we've seen a lot of movement here in these two regions, we're still kind of watching this area for potential larger scale movement soon. Not to mention this area up here to the northwest Pacific plate, but this one's been on the list for quite a while. This one's been awfully quiet. We've always seen something pop up here now, and it's just been been way too long for some large scale movement here along this area of the Pacific Ring of Fire. With all the deeper earthquake activity inland here, and I'm talking deep, some of this stuff was super deep. There's ultimately buildup of pressure, accumulated stress here along this region of the Pacific plate, so watching that area for in the near future as well. But for now, the pressure, I think, has shifted back here to the North American Pacific plate area, and watching the west coast light up pretty significantly. One little earthquake out here. See, this area, I've seen that 2.3 in the Sandy Valley area. I believe this is the area that seen that movement last week. Let's see if we can pull it up here. Maybe it's been, oh, no, that's actually south of there, I believe. Yeah, there's a Eureka Valley region. That's the area that's seen that swarming kick up. This here is kind of new. We haven't seen any earthquake activity within this region. 2.3 Sandy Valley, 6.6 kilometers. The Kingston Range. Not for sure what's out there. Let's take a look. Not a whole lot. Not a whole lot of water, that's for sure, unless it's way down there. Have to drill that well pretty deep. Yeah, kind of looks like the surface of Mars, doesn't it? Woo! So a little bit of movement. Looks like right outside this little mountain range, but down there, 6.6 kilometers. As far as fault systems go, there's no doubt, definitely some fault systems. This is the end of the Garlock fault structure, but I think it's crazy how the movement pretty much stops south of here and then picks up north of here. I mean, I think this thing plays a major part in some stresses right here along this area of the North American Pacific Plate interaction, because that's kind of where they all meet. If you think about the Garlock fault structure, you got the, of course, the North American plate, the Pacific plate. I think this area is kind of more of a dangerous zone than people think when it comes to producing something significant. But we'll keep an eye on it. Let's see if this has been reviewed. 2.3. It has been reviewed, so it is holding steady as a legit earthquake in that region. Historically, of course, these are 4.0 and above. Let me bring this up here. 4.5 and above. Yeah, there has not been, at least on this map, maybe one little 4.5 over here around the Nevada-California state line since about 1900, but don't see a whole lot of earthquake activity, so it kind of struck me as odd seeing that movement there. Yellowstone overnight, not a whole lot of movement, continued loss of data. Well, actually it looks like it came back. I don't know why it's going down overnight. Earthquake activity looks pretty quiet. A little bit of microquakes here over the last few hours, early this morning. Nothing big, just a couple small spikes. You can see that indicated there on the map. Tremor map was kicking up last night along the Cascadia subduction zone with 183 epicenters of tremor. Again, this here leads me to believe the large regional pressure increase, right? You're not going to have a subduction of a plate unless you have pressure pushing it down there and ultimately building strain up here along the locked area of the Cascadia. So that's just another confirmation of regional pressure here as a whole along the North American plate. So when we have regional pressure as a whole, obviously we're going to have an increase in plate tectonics called earthquakes, right? The inland areas with that have been hit before in the past, and areas of the plate boundary. So just be on guard out here along the west coast today with that renewed earthquake movement. All right, guys, have a good day. Stay safe out there. Going to get out and enjoy some fresh air and the day. And we will be back a little bit later this evening with an update video, unless something bigger happens in between. Have a good day, folks. Enjoy your Monday.